Greetings, this is Marshall Jones from Winthrop University in Rock Hill, South Carolina in the United States of America. I'm delighted to be with you virtually today, and I'm very excited to be a part of this conference on STEAM learning in Dhaka. I'd like to thank the organizers of this event for asking me to speak and giving me this invitation. In particular, I'd like to thank the GEIST Foundation. I have worked with the GEIST Foundation for a number of years. I'm a proud international advisor to the foundation, and so I am excited about continuing the work with you. I'd also like to thank the representatives from the Cadet College system in Bangladesh for the opportunity to speak with you today. This presentation will be available to you on YouTube. My contact information and a copy of the presentation, should you wish to have one, is available from the conference organizers. So if you contact them, they'll be able to get you those materials. My wife, Mary, and I were very happy to be at the Global Summit on Education in Dhaka in March, and we wish that we could be with you here today, although we are very happy that we're not on an airplane for 28 hours. When I was with you in March, I spoke about open educational resources. Today's meeting is about STEAM, and I'm sure that you know by now that STEAM in English stands for science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. The study of STEAM subjects is very important. But when we talk about STEAM, we want to think not only about the subjects, but we want to think about the application of it, or STEAM learning. STEAM learning involves not only the study of content, but applying it to real problems. So we're talking about problem-based learning, project-based learning, and other active learning types of activities in classrooms. I like to think of it as less teacher talking and more student working. So students engaged in actual problems within the learning environment. What do we mean by that? Real problems in classroom means that students are given an activity to do, a problem to solve, if you will. There is a classic example of this type of activity. Some of you may have done it before. Students are asked to create a structure using paper that can hold heavy weights. So, when students are given this problem, they're oftentimes a little confused because paper is thin and paper is fragile. Paper tears easy. You can take a piece of paper and you can crush it up with one hand very easily. But as students begin to experiment with the problem and experiment with paper, they learn some things. For example, if you take a piece of paper and you roll it up into a tube, that tube actually becomes quite strong. So where I could crush a piece of paper very easily in my hands, crushing a tube is much more difficult. Students can then take multiple tubes, connect them together, and they can create structures out of paper that are very strong, that can hold a lot of weight. I want you to keep that idea, that project, that problem in mind as we move through this presentation. You can think about implementing STEAM at 3 different levels. Locally, at the classroom level, regionally within your community, within your town, within your district, and then largely within your country. So let's talk about STEAM in the classroom. There are 3 things I want you to remember that all good STEAM teachers do. 1, they create confusion. 2, they don't answer questions. And 3, they let students fail. Create confusion, don't answer questions, let students fail. Maybe I better explain that a little further. Creating confusion means that people don't learn when they're comfortable. We learn when there's a dynamic tension between things we don't know and things we want to know or things we need to know. Think for a moment about traveling to a new city. If you travel to a new city and you want to go from your hotel to a museum, you can use your phone and get directions, and you can make your way from your hotel to your museum. But if you want to learn your way around a new city, then you need to get lost a few times. It is while we're getting lost that we begin to make better connections with the city, and we begin to learn the way the city works. When I say that teachers should not answer questions, what I mean is that we want our students to be able to experiment and be able to come up with their own answers. So, instead of asking the question, when you're asked a question, how should I build this paper structure? Ask your students, what do you think? Let them be able to become comfortable with coming up with solutions on their own. So when I say that you shouldn't answer questions from students, what I'm saying is that you should be answering those questions in ways that help your students think about these problems for themselves. Not every student in a paper challenge is going to come up with the idea of a tube. They may come up with a different idea. That idea may be much better than a tube. That idea may fail spectacularly. And if it fails, that's actually a good thing. There's a lot to be learned from failing. Now, I'm not talking about failing their national exams. Let's be very clear about that. But we learn a lot more from our mistakes than we do from our successes. So what we want within STEAM learning is to create an environment where our students can try. Our students can fail. Our students can get feedback from us, from other students, from people in the community, and then try again. Because the goal is not for the students to fail forever. The goal is for students to learn from their mistakes so that they can get better. Shah Rukh Khan, the Indian actor, once said that success is not a very good teacher. Failure makes you humble. And I think that's a good way to think about it. So within your classroom, setting up activities that allow for students to work with STEAM subjects is something that you want to learn how to do. This is going to mean changing perhaps the way that you manage your classroom. This is going to mean perhaps dealing with some very difficult problems within your classrooms. Creating problem-based learning in a classroom that may have 40, 50, 60, 70, 100 students, that can seem quite challenging. But what we're asking our students to do is to face those challenges and to solve those problems. And that's what you're going to need to do as a STEAM teacher as well, or a teacher using STEAM. So think of it as a way that you can model that problem-solving process for your students. We talked about STEAM in the classroom. Now let's talk about STEAM in the community. Getting our communities to accept STEAM as a viable option in education can be challenging, because for many people in our communities, the picture on the right is what schools are supposed to be. Students sitting in desks, working on problems, with the teacher at the front of the room giving them the knowledge that they need. There's nothing wrong with this. A lot of things are learned by listening to experts talk about them. I would hope that listening to me talk about this is helping you learn something. But if we're going to get our communities to embrace STEAM learning, then we're going to have to change some perceptions about teaching, and we're going to have to change people's understanding of what schools can be. And part of that is going to be helping them understand what STEAM is. You're doing some of this already in your communities. I know because I've seen pictures of this on the GEIST Foundation's website. One of the things we're talking about is organizing events in your communities that can help people understand what STEAM activities are. And one of those things that we're doing in the U.S. are what are called STEAM festivals. A STEAM festival is a community event where different organizations in the community will set up displays or booths or tables where they will have hands-on STEAM learning activities for the community to engage in. Typically, these activities are designed for children so that it's an event where parents bring their children to learn about science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. These activities are often staffed by universities or companies or schools who are doing interesting things in STEAM fields so that children are encouraged to work with their hands, they're encouraged to touch, they're encouraged to build, they're encouraged to create. What activities happen at a STEAM festival vary between festivals. This is an activity where students are working with a small robot called a Sphero, and they are learning to drive the robot and program the robot using an iPad. But keep in mind that STEAM is more than science and it's more than engineering. STEAM is also arts. So local organizations like this drum band may be there to present as well. STEAM festivals are very popular in the U.S. As a matter of fact, there is one happening in Rock Hill, South Carolina on October 27th. You are all cordially invited. So I told you that I was going to talk to you about STEAM in the classroom, in your community, and within your countries. I'll be honest, classrooms and communities are easier than your countries because every country is different. Every country has a different structure. Every country has its own set of challenges and its own set of strengths. In the United States, national education policy is very difficult because we don't have it. Our education is monitored and controlled largely at the local and state level. So while we have a U.S. Department of Education, we don't have a national education system. In many of your countries, you may have the advantage of having such a system. If you have such a system, in order to get STEAM learning within your country as an initiative, there are some things that you need to do. I would encourage you to look at what other countries are doing with STEAM, particularly countries that may be within your geographic region or who may share some of the characteristics of your country. The GEIST Foundation is an excellent organization to begin making some of those connections. But making STEAM happen in your country means that you really need to know who your leaders are. You need to know who is making education policy in your countries, and you need to find a way to connect with them. Which means that any opportunity that you have to be involved in curriculum development at a national level is something you need to pursue. I would also encourage you to begin thinking about your elevator speech. In South Carolina, we have been writing standards for coding or computer programming for our state education system. Now, this is really important because the state is going to say to our schools that we're now going to be teaching coding in our curriculum through kindergarten through the 12th grade. So our teachers have been involved in getting to know the people writing those standards and in finding themselves on the proper state level committees to have some voice in what those standards are. If you have a national education system, you're going to need to find who those people are so that you can be involved in writing that curriculum, so that you can be involved in helping to shape and make policy within your countries. So being involved with writing those curriculum standards is very important. But I'd also like for you to think about the fact that you may have just a very short period of time to make your case or to talk about what your plans are to your leaders. That's why we talk about developing an elevator speech. What's an elevator speech? It's a very short pitch of what your ideas are. And we call it an elevator speech because you think of it as having the time it takes to get from the ground floor of the building to the 15th floor of the building, or wherever you're going with this person, that you may have their undivided attention for that period of time. So being able to think about what your projects are, being able to articulate them clearly, being able to do it in a short, succinct manner is something that you want to learn to do. So we've been talking today about STEAM learning, and we have learned that STEAM learning is less teacher talking and more student working. We've talked about implementing STEAM within your classroom, your community, and your country. We've talked about classroom strategies that you might use for teaching STEAM within your classrooms. We've talked about strategies for engaging your community, and we've talked about things that you might need to do to be able to make an impact on STEAM education within your country. I'd like to thank you once again for the opportunity to speak with you today. I wish you the best of luck in the remainder of this conference. I wish I were there to learn from all of you as well, but I know that the GEIST Foundation will be publishing much of that material, and I'll be able to follow along later. Again, the conference organizers will be able to help you get access to these materials. They'll be able to provide you with the YouTube link and a copy of the presentation and my contact information should you need it. Again, this is Marshall Jones from Winthrop University in Rock Hill, South Carolina, USA. Thank you very much.